And you're not going to have a quick win by adding some secret meta tag to your website, say meta tag equals rank me #1 Google, because it doesn't work that way. It takes a lot of patience, a lot of content development, takes a lot of trust building, and that doesn't happen overnight.
Welcome to the Lion's Den, hosted by Lance Bachman.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Den this week. I'm happy and fired up to have Barry Schwartz. I think anyone in our space knows who you are, Barry, at this point, but just in case, let me introduce you real fast. You're an editor at Search Engine Land. You help run all the SMX events, which I love advanced SMX. If people don't go to that, they're foolish. That's probably one of the best shows out there, bar none. You also own RustyBrick. You're the CEO, which is a software development company. And you pretty much help companies do SaaS products, correct? Like mobile apps and run their companies more efficient and anything that's custom mobile apps and development, correct?
That's right. Yeah, we pretty much build SaaS-based products and also internal products for customers to make them more efficient and so forth.
I know you run Search Engine Roundtable, which is probably the most popular, most trusted source. I mean, right? You, Search Engine Land, and you know, there's a competitor to you, Search Engine Journal, but you guys are the most trusted sources out there when it comes to digital marketing. So for people that don't know you, I appreciate you being on the show. Can you please introduce yourself, Barry, and talk about who you are and what you do for the last 20 some years in our space as a leader?
Well, thanks. That's a great introduction. I appreciate it. So my Twitter bio says I'm a search geek. So my profession is building out very boring software to make companies more efficient. But my hobby, which might be considered even more boring, is to write about how search is changing over the years. So I've been writing about, Google and search engines since 2003. It started as a way of keeping notes about what's changing in the industry. And one thing we know about search is that it's constantly changing. So I was surprised that I could write 5 posts a day for a year, let alone almost 20 years. I'm writing 5 to 10 posts a day on average for the past almost 20 years or so. So I just love writing about search and how things are changing, how it impacts search marketers. And I love figuring out ways to make companies more efficient at my company, which is called RustyBrick. That's how you can find me on social media. That's my website, rustybrick.com. On Twitter, subscribe to my YouTube channel, smash that like button, whatever YouTubers say. But yeah, I mean, I've pretty much been covering in the SEO world. I've been pretty much covering how search has changed over the past 20 or so years.
So let's just jump into that. If you like this content, make sure you follow me at Lance Bachman on my handles, except for Lance Bachman Digital on Facebook. But let's just jump into that. How does someone that loves software, that's mostly what RustyBrick does. You come in, you look at companies, you say, we're going to build you custom software. How do you fall in love with digital marketing? I mean, I'm not being rude. Like, I'm not a software person. They're two different principles.
Well, somewhat, yes. The technical SEO side is very, very interesting around how search engines crawl, index, how their ranking algorithm works. So when I first started to learn about search engines, which was actually from a client saying, we built obviously front ends for the back ends often. So some customers are like, how do I get my site to rank for whatever in Alta Vista? And I'm like, good question. Let me look it up. And they're like, all right, stick a bunch of white text on white background and you're good to go. Back in the old days.
You got today.
Hopefully not too much of it. But basically it was like, all right, it was a technical thing. It was really very technical back then. It was just like with e-commerce sites, it was all about faceted navigation and making sure your URL parameters make sense. The old content management systems didn't even have URL structure. They had session IDs to create pages dynamically. And every single time you visit a page, it would be a brand new page ID for the same exact piece of content. So back then it was very, very technical in terms of like, how can I make search engine friendly URLs? Now you just create a WordPress site or a Shopify site and you're good to go out of the box, which is great. So our technical expertise in my company, at least in terms of, building out very simple sites for search engines to crawl, kind of quickly went to building out software to make businesses more, efficient, because it was just something that, out of the box, you could buy those things now in terms of SEO, in terms of SEO friendly platforms.
Now, you are a trusted source. I know you started your career, I think correctly, you, Danny Sullivan, and a few other people at Search Engine Watch, correct?
So I technically started at Search Engine Roundtable in 2003. I didn't start at Search Engine Watch until like 2004 or so with Danny Sullivan. Danny Sullivan actually started Search Engine Watch in the late 90s, and then SES as well.
And then
He's been writing about search forever.
You guys left together to go start. You guys left and started. What made you leave? What made you say, hey, listen, it's time to go out? Did you guys want to do more? Did you want to give more free content? Because you guys give out so much free content, which is it's a lot of work. People don't understand how much work you guys put into everyone on your team into giving all this free content.
Right. So it wasn't really my decision. Danny Sullivan obviously founded Search Engine Watch. He sold it at some point to, I think, Jupiter Media or one of these companies. And then Jupiter Media was bought by, I think, Incisive Media. And I guess the relationship there in terms of what Danny wanted from Incisive Media, what Incisive Media wanted, whatever, didn't necessarily work out. So Danny's like, you know what? I'm going to, part ways. And Danny's like, I'm leaving. And I'm like, I'm coming. I don't really care about the money. I make enough money on the RustyBrick side. I just, I want to just, write with you. Danny's just an incredible mind. The way he understands things, the way he actually conveys that in his writing is just amazing. And Google got a really good employee when they hired him a few years ago. So it wasn't like anything negative on my part. I just wanted to work with Danny.
Well, that's good. Here's a question for you. There's so much BS out there in our space, as you know, especially that you're not selling anything in our space, right? I mean, you're pretty much just write content. Listen, everyone's going to say, well, Lance, you're wrong. They make money off of people advertise. Well, of course, you got to pay for this somehow, right? I mean, so I get all that, but you're not making millions and millions of dollars on Search Engine Roundtable and your products, right? So my question to you is, you guys are the most trusted source, one of two or three out there. I know you don't take that lightly. Do you have a vetting process before you guys give all this information out? Are you guys looking at, because there's so much BS out there, and most of the stuff on your sites are pretty accurate.
No, I mean, vetting process in terms of what we write. Is that your question?
Not what you're writing, what you also accept from people. Because you let people write and put articles on there. And I know some of it, but most of it seems pretty spot on. Are you saying, hey, if this is totally fraudulent, I'm not going to accept it?
So I'm not so involved in the what we call columnist side of things. But I often get asked to vet stuff. Like people are like, is this true? Is this what this person's writing necessarily true? And often it's not necessarily, like if it's questioned, it's not necessarily true, but that person believes it might be true. So like in the SEO industry, a lot of people think that pogo sticking or dwell time or those type of user metrics are a ranking factor. When Google says outright, and have been saying outright, it's not a ranking factor. So when they word it, they have to say, yeah, Google says it's not a ranking factor, but based on my data, I think it really is because of X, Y, and Z. So there is a lot of BS out there, but at the same time, the reason there's a lot of BS out there is because sometimes other third-party studies from third-party companies like Moz or SEMrush or whatever, or even your internal data, I'm sure you have, tens of thousands of customers over the years, you have lots of data to maybe prove something that Google says is wrong in your own mind. So it's hard to say something is exactly BS. I mean, it's not really exact science because Google's not giving us their algorithm and they're constantly changing their algorithm. So what might have worked, 10 years ago, like white text and white backgrounds, might not work as well today, in 2021. So yeah, it's just basically a lot of experience. We've been in this business for a while. You can smell the BS, very quickly.
No doubt. You're big on conferences. You like going there, you speak at a ton of them. What makes you enjoy that part of the job? Because that just seems taxing. I mean, are you married? Do you have kids? I mean.
Yeah. So I'm married and I have a lot of kids. Actually, I have 5 kids. I make a joke that I enjoy getting away from the family since there's so many kids in the house. But I'm always in the office anyway, and they're not here. So I work out of the house, thank God. And I literally live in my office, and then I come home when they're about to go to sleep. So it is a good break, obviously, but at the same time, traveling, I hate the traveling part. I hate getting on planes and not knowing if I get there on time. The delays and so forth are just very stressful, especially when you have to land by a certain time to make sure you speak in time. And that's a bit stressful, and you don't control things. I'm like a control freak. So often if it's like I have to drive, if it's a flight for, an hour versus a drive for like 4 hours, I will drive because I have control over that. I'm not afraid of flying. I'm the type of person that actually watches like the show Airline Disasters on planes because I enjoy the turbulence while I'm driving, while I'm flying, and kind of feel like it's real. I enjoy that. I'm a weird person. Uh, but in any event, I'm not a real. Although I'm really social online, I'm not the biggest social person. I rarely go to any of the after-hour events. I'm not the most chattery or social person at the conferences. I'm good on stage in terms of telling people information. I could talk to people in terms versus like talking with people, if that makes sense.
No, I mean, yeah, no, I understand that. Let's talk about some agency stuff, some Google stuff, and jump into that, because I think a lot of viewers are going to hear that. Let's talk about their Core Vitals update. What are you seeing with Page Experience Update? What are you seeing? What are people saying to you? How big is it? Is it going to be huge? Is it not? You tell us.
Yeah, so I believe the Core Web Vitals / Google Page Experience Update, which was already delayed, was supposed to launch this month. It's now delayed until, I guess, a month and a half or through August, is not going to be a big deal.
You don't think it's going to be a big deal at all?
I think it's going to be a pretty minor deal, just like every other pre-announced Google update in their history. I mean, the big deals are the ones that they announce. Either it's happening, your core update's happening today, or it happened yesterday. Those are the big deals. The ones with like the page experience update or the HTTPS update or the mobile interstitials update and on and on and on, like your mobile friendly update, while they're important and they probably have a big impact on conversions and making your users happy, in terms of ranking, they usually don't have a massive impact on a site's ranking. And that's just the nature of it, because Google still wants to rank the most relevant pages, even if they don't have the best user experience. And relevancy is based on content, page rank, links, and so forth. It's not based off of if your site loads a fraction of a second faster than your neighbors.
Would you say, I'm just asking just from an SEO, would you say links are still a number one ranking factor?
That's a tough one. It's definitely, that would be tough. I would probably say it's up there with content and links. The question is, what comes first? It's been the debate forever. Back in the days, it would be like, yeah, no joke, easily, links are the number one factor. You could create a one-page website with a big GIF on it with no content and rank for whatever you wanted to. Like the old story about the word click here. If you search for the word click here in Google, Adobe PDF software used to rank number one because everybody had PDF documents on their site and said, click here to download PDF, Adobe Reader. And that click here was the reason they ranked number one for click here. But that no longer happens. Click here, if you do a search for that, I think a usability website comes up, because now content is not necessarily more important, but it's much more important than it used to be. So I think it's pretty close. And I know Google's been downplaying the significance of links in the past several years. And especially with Penguin updates and all these link algorithms, I think it's much, much harder to just get a bunch of links to your website and just rank for whatever you want. I mean you've been there. So
here's a question for you. And right now, Google GMBs, people are losing them left and right because they don't understand that you can't have 30 of them, 20 of them without a location, right? They just don't comprehend that. Why is Google now, do you think? Because over the last 6 months, they've really just have been dropping people. They don't care. You could have 40 reviews on it, 100 reviews on it, and the majority of them aren't coming back. You can't prove you have a physical location there. Why do you think Google's making such a hard push on the GMB section?
I mean, there's a lot of bad press. I mean, even just yesterday, there was a big article about review manipulation and local manipulation in Google, specifically Google Maps. Over the years, there's been lots of very negative articles from massive publishers like the New York Times and Wall Street Journal about how poorly Google's doing in terms of spam and review spam and just fake businesses being listed in Google Maps. And I think, I'm hoping, I don't know if it's true, but Google has made steps like this before, where they're banning a lot of local listings. They're penalizing them, they're removing them, they're removing reviews. Google has made these efforts before. I don't know if this is going to solve the map spam problem, but it is a massive problem for Google, and it's a big black eye for Google. So I think they're doing whatever they can to try to limit the amount of fake listings they have on there. At the same time, with that, there's always false positives, and there's no way around that.
Here's a question for you. What's the biggest opportunity right now, would you say, in the digital space for a small business? For someone doing between, let's just say, $1 million to 10 million. I know that's still like in the banking world, it's up to 90 million would make you small, but in our world, a small business is going to be $1 million to $10 to $20 million. What's their biggest opportunity? And then let's just say mid-sized businesses also. What do you say right now?
So it depends on the business type. Obviously, for any local like business related to like, I don't know, lawn care or AC people or whatever, plumbers and so forth, Google My Business is the number one opportunity for these businesses. And a lot of them probably don't even have it. I don't know. I think you would know better than I do. So Google My Business, get a Google My Business listing, fill it out completely. Ask your customers every single time you have a happy customer and you walk out of that location, please, I'll send you an email with a link to go ahead and leave me a review. Simple stuff. I mean, if they could build that into their workflow, I assume you have software that does it for your customers.
Yes.
It's just basic stuff, and a lot of these people don't know how to do that. And that is probably the biggest opportunity for a small, local-ish based business, in my opinion, is Google My Business.
Here's a question for you. Where do you see the biggest downside that small businesses make? What do you think their biggest issue that they don't do correctly as small businesses when it comes to digital marketing?
I think the biggest things I see in terms of the mistakes they make is they don't do enough testing to see whatever they implement actually has any success factors. They'll be like, oh, this expert said do this, I'm going to implement it and not look at the results from it. And often, what that person might be recommending might actually have a negative impact on your specific business. So that is like one thing. Another thing might be relying too much on third-party metrics. I cannot tell you how many emails I get every day, I'm sure you do too, about I have this DA and I want to go ahead and trade links with you based on your DA, and DA is obviously referring to Moz's domain authority. And DA means absolutely nothing to Google. And there's businesses that are buying and selling links on DA because they can't buy and sell links based on PageRank or PR. And again, that's completely against Google's guidelines, and they're just doing that blindly without really understanding it. And I would definitely not do that without, making sure you hire somebody that really knows what they're doing. And the final thing is probably they're just, I don't know, they're looking for the quick wins, meaning they're looking for a quick shortcut. And starting any new business, any new website, even opening a shop down the block, success doesn't happen overnight unless you already have an established business. Like if Google launches, I don't know, a new product like Google Glass or whatever it might be, obviously, whenever they launch anything big or small, it becomes big really fast because they have the Google brand behind it. But most small businesses do not have that behind them. And they need to just say, all right, we're starting here and we're going to build up our business doing step by step to build it up. And you're not going to have a quick win by adding some secret meta tag to your website, say meta tag equals rank me number one Google, because it doesn't work that way. It takes a lot of patience, a lot of content development, takes a lot of trust building. And that doesn't happen overnight.
If you like this content and you're trying to grow your business, follow me at Lance Bachman and Lance Bachman Digital on Facebook. LFG, time to grow. What do you think about all the privacy stuff going on? It's getting more and more. They're bringing out more stuff. Facebook's doing the privacy stuff. Google just came out their own privacy stuff updates again. Do you think that's going to be an issue for digital marketers?
Less so on the Google side in terms of at least organic search and Google My Business, more so on the paid side, specifically a lot with Facebook, Instagram, that type of marketing, because a lot of that relied on, I could target this individual criteria based on this person, liking to go for long walks at night in a city, and also wakes up and enjoys this type of coffee. You can't target that. Back in the old days, you're actually able to target people specifically working in a specific department in a specific company. So if you want to just get all the loan officers in the Northeast region, you could easily do that. Now it's much, much harder. And we saw this coming, obviously, with the European regulation back with GDPR. And there's tons and tons of regulations that is coming down the pipe for the past 5 years. And now it's really at this point where it's like, we don't have much to target off of, but with SEO, and even Google ads, there's a lot, query-based targeting, like what people are searching for, is gold. So that's really great. There's lots of things you could look at that in terms of like, what are we missing out of? And of course, Apple recently with the iOS 14.6, I think.
Correct.
They released, obviously, don't track me in the things. You get pop-ups, don't let this app track me. And it's everywhere. And the question is, how many people are going to say, yes, let me track you? So I can't imagine most people say yes to any of those types of prompts. So that's going to really restrict people in terms of cross-app tracking. Facebook's going to take a big hit with that. I think they already kind of said that in their earnings report. Instagram, which is obviously part of Facebook. Any of these types of apps that use targeting in terms of monetizing users is really going to have to look for other ways to monetize that.
So, and I get that's all going away, but they haven't talked about taking away similar audiences across any of these platforms. You can do it in Google, Facebook, Instagram, which obviously you can also now do it in LinkedIn and YouTube. But no one seems to be using their own data and going out and building out similar audiences. Do you think that's going to go away, or do you think people should invest in it? Because we're telling all of our clients invest in it, because they got to give you something to go after, because they're not just going to say, no one's going to say, trust me blindly.
Right. So obviously, like Google's doing that. They're using they're calling it first party data, and they're creating their own cohorts. What are they calling that? They're basically cohorts learning. I forgot the acronym they're using. But how do you build your own if you're a new business starting up from scratch? It just takes, you can't do the targeting from day one. And even if after a year, sometimes your business just doesn't have thousands and thousands or tens of thousands of customers to target based off of their email lists are pretty small. So it's going to be hard for new businesses. They're going to be at a disadvantage. The ones that are really taking advantage of this is obviously the massive companies that have that data. Apple, Google, Facebook. It's easy for them to go ahead and be like, yeah, we're going to add privacy stuff to our, so that Apple could do whatever they want. I mean, they don't care. They have the whole market in their pocket, literally walking around constantly in their pocket, knowing where they are at any point, what apps they're using, what websites they're going to. But they're keeping that information private and secure because they don't need to monetize advertising. So it's easy for Apple to say Google could make their own first party data very easily. Facebook can too. But it really, in terms of that app tracking feature, Google, Apple's cutting off that thing from like a Google app being able to track across to the web by disabling that. So I guess Google could figure out other ways to do that and link it up. So could Facebook. But the small players are the ones that are really missing out.
Do you think that they're cutting it off because of truly privacy, or do you think it's the revenue share part? Because most people don't understand Apple, Facebook, Google, they all do revenue shares. I mean, no different than City Search did with Yellow Pages. Like everyone in our space has revenue shares somewhere, most likely, right? Do you think there's just not enough money in the revenue share? People are getting greedy, or do you think it's just truly privacy and we don't want to face what Europe faces?
So I don't think Google or Facebook want to go this route. I think they want to have the old days of cookies. That's my opinion. I'm pretty sure. But now we're at this place where they're like, yeah, we're going to embrace it. And this is not going to impact your targeting. And you can still advertise with us and still be able to target. We use these cohorts instead of whatever. So that's Google's pitch. Apple, I don't think needs that. I mean, they make so much money selling hardware and so forth and subscription-based services. They don't do that much with iAds and so forth. I don't think they necessarily need it. And I think them cutting that feature off gives them a little bit of a competitive advantage in terms of competing with their major competitors, Google and Amazon, and Facebook. Amazon too makes a tremendous amount of money on online ads. But they're kind of like sitting back and watching everything.
Yeah, most people don't know that. Most people don't know that.
Huge.
If you're sitting here, right, and so Google Analytics keeps making more and more updates now. You see that their Search Console keeps making more and more updates, which I appreciate the Search Console, them making more and more updates, because at least you're not flying blind. And also Google Analytics is making a lot more updates. Why do you think they're giving now digital marketers so much information in Search Console and Analytics? Why do you think they're giving us more information?
So, I mean, I think they need to be able to give information to marketers so that Google could go ahead and then tell them to spend more money. I don't know if they're giving us more information. Google Search Console shows us search data in a somewhat of an anonymized way.
I mean, the technical side, they're giving us more technical stuff. Scheme is in there now. The core value, they're giving us information, 5-6 years ago, you couldn't really find much in there.
Right. So now, because when Google got rid of, the not provided, so they got rid of the query data from Google Analytics, they had to come up with something to give us in terms of search query data, and they gave us Search Console or Webmaster Tools back then. And they're constantly improving that, thankfully, because now we have a lot more data in terms of what people are doing on search to get to our website, including, the click-through rates and how that works with rich results and so forth, and giving us all this great structured data to mark up our results and get the click-through rate. Google Analytics it has some type of integration path with Google Search Console. You can link the two, and you can actually bring them in. So you can bring in query data, but it doesn't like give you. What they're worried about is, remember the old like the AOL data leak, where when data was like kind of leaked, they were able, some reporter was able to go ahead and actually link up the AOL data leak to find a specific person who searched for a specific query in AOL search, and find out it was like an old grandmother, in their living room in Colorado or whatever their actual location. It was a pretty embarrassing query. So you don't want somebody to people tell Google the most intimate and personal things. And you don't want that information to, leak and come up in an article where, Barry Schwartz searched for some weird rash. I mean, nobody wants that. Nobody wants to see that. No, I don't want to see that. So I think they just have to be super careful, especially around all these privacy laws. At the same time, they have to give some cool data to try to like give you some type of AI base, which you're using like all the time. I'm using AI for this and AI for that to try to come up with this type of segment of these are your types of users, and try to like say, all right, these are the types of users you should target because we see with other people's data that this is similar to your data and so forth. And they're not really using specific user data, but they're coming up with these like cohorts of people to actually kind of give you that information. So I'm not sure. I mean, I think they're trying to go ahead and give us something cool with AI. At the same time, will it ever be as cool as actual data we used to have in the old days? I don't know. I don't think so.
I don't think so either. Here's a question for you. And then I know there's a lot of things here. Do you think SEO agencies and digital marketing agencies, do you think it's going to continue to grow, or do you think they're trying to get rid of the agencies?
I don't think Google wants to get rid of agencies. I think there will always be a positive ROI for companies to hire agencies, because if you ever worked with Google's ad reps directly, they just don't give the same care and they don't have the same experience and knowledge in terms of really trying to like save money for the customers as well as have the biggest return on investment. And from every single case I've seen where customers switch from Google's ad reps to an agency, virtually every single time they would see a significant boost in their ad spend to return on investment. And I think Google's fine with that. I mean, I think Google has their ad reps for people who are not thinking about agencies. People think, oh, I can't afford an agency, I'll just do it myself. And Google's ad reps are just aimed at trying to get those companies to spend more money with Google. So I think agencies are here to stay because they really do show an ROI to their customers.
Next question. Is SEO dead?
Yes. See you later. No, I mean, people have been sucking SEO is dead forever. Search engine optimization is never, I mean, as long as there's a Google or a search box on the internet, even if it's DuckDuckGo or whatever it might be, as long as there's a search box, even if you're talking to your devices, you're talking to your Alexas, you're talking to your Google Homes, you're talking to your Apple Siri, you're typing in a search query into your box, SEO will never be dead. It's all about trying to make your customers' websites more prominent in search, and doing things like building content that helps users, and doing things that basically Google wants you to do. Google likes working with SEOs in order to get new pages indexed and the best content ranked. So there's always going to be a great partnership, I think, between Google and SEOs, especially the SEOs that are doing this in a way that's not against Google's guidelines.
How is product reviews going to play into things now with the update?
So Google had an update about a month ago called the Product Reviews Update. And that really doesn't affect most e-commerce sites. In fact, it's not really targeted towards e-commerce sites. It's targeted towards people who write reviews about new products that come out, like the Verge when they release a review about the new iPhone, or reviews about Casper mattress, or any of the new stuff that comes out. So if you're in that market, it affects you. That's what it's designed for. And it's basically like a mini core update that around content, specifically around product review content. And the same rules apply when it comes to building out great content on your own website. You want to make sure you follow all the EAT stuff: expertise, trustworthiness, authoritativeness. Oh, I said ETA. EAT is expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. And the same type of thing, they want in-depth content that was written like a professional, that really answers this person's question. So if you are in that space and you are selling on an e-commerce site and you have a blog that does reviews, make sure that blog has the most authoritative stuff. You might have to bring in one of your geeky friends that loves iPhones to write that iPhone review. And you might have to have them do that review over multiple days to write the best piece of content. You can't have it done in a matter of seconds. So just write the best stuff.
Barry, you ready? What does the future of digital marketing look like?
Wow, that's a hard one. The future of digital marketing. So I think we covered some of this. It's going to be less data for us to work off of, more AI-based assumptions of what those users are doing and how to satisfy those users' intent. You're going to have to build much better, much more comprehensive websites with much deeper content. You're going to have to earn the trust of your customers, and you have to build that kind of personal relationship with the customers who are accessing your website in a mass way, which is kind of hard, but you could do that if you really, have the right partner with you. So it's not going to be easy. It's going to be a lot of hard work, but I think that's the future, is really connecting with personal users, your personal customers, using more of an AI-based solution, whatever that might mean.
I hate to ask this last question because I already did the final roar, but do you think there's any business out there, for the most part, that social media doesn't apply to in this day and age? For the most part, like an HVAC company, lawyers, law firms, SaaS companies, should they not be on social media?
Trying to think of like really corrupt companies that want to stay off social media, like people who have really bad reputations, or certain companies that are scamming, like ransomware companies. They should probably stay off social media. Companies that are scamming other companies, they probably should stay off. People who are doing illegal stuff, stay off social media. People spreading misinformation probably should stay off social media, but they're using it. So, but everybody's on social media. There are people who think social media is, evil. I don't know. I'm not going to get into politics, but yeah, I think every business, any legit business that wants to grow their company, should probably be on social media.
Last question, final roar. How has social media changed your life and your business life?
So with social media, I don't really post much personal stuff. So it really hasn't changed me personally, I guess. I keep my family off social media because I do have a significant following. But in terms of business life, I do with Search Engine Roundtable and the content I produce, I'm able to share content and people are able to give me content back. I find a lot of what I write about is based on what the community is sharing on social media. And that was in the old days, old-fashioned online discussion forums, like going to Webmaster World or SEO Chat or whatever the old forums were. And now a lot of it's on Twitter and Facebook, and being able to look at what the community is saying and then highlight the most important discussions to a much wider audience, because social media is just a flow of information, and it's hard to find the best stuff. And I try to use social media in order to find the best type of stuff that's on the internet and highlight that on my blog. And then it's a great way for me to communicate and get content out, get people to communicate about what's important to them. And it's just a great channel to, spread, information about, what people should be worried about or not worried about when it comes to search.
So Barry, thank you for being on the Den. I really appreciate it. Everyone check out Barry, go to his website, RustyBrick. And if you're looking for custom applications to make you more efficient, his company's great. People know him in the industry. He's been doing this a long time. I appreciate it very much. Thank you so much for being on the Den, Barry.
Thanks so much for having me.